everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're cracking open Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life.
A real impactful read, lots to unpack there.
It sure is, and we're going to try to give you the short version, all the good stuff, without getting bogged down.
Right to the core.
Exactly.
Peterson's no stranger to big ideas.
Not at all. Clinical psychologist, professor, maps of meaning, but 12 rules, that's what really put him on the map.
Absolutely, it resonated with a lot of people, and for good reason. It gets at these fundamental questions about meaning, about suffering, how to live in the world.
Yeah, heavy stuff. But he tackles it all head on, even throws in some surprising examples along the way, like lobsters.
That's what's so interesting about his approach. He pulls from all these different areas, psychology, philosophy, even biology, and yeah, lobsters. He uses them to illustrate this really crucial idea of order and chaos.
Okay, so help me out here, because at first glance, those seem kind of unrelated.
Right, so when Peterson talks about order and chaos, he's not just talking about, like, a messy room versus a clean one.
So it's a bit deeper than that.
Yeah, think about it. Societies have structures, rules, we find comfort in routines. Even in nature, there are these cycles of, growth and decay, order and disorder. This interplay is constant, and it's at the core of Peterson's whole worldview.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture a little, but I still don't see where the lobsters fit in.
So lobsters, as different as they seem from us, they actually have these complex social structures. They fight, they compete, they establish dominance.
Wait, are you saying lobsters have, like, a hierarchy?
Exactly. And it determines their access to resources, their place in the social order. And the fascinating thing is, lobsters have been around for a really long time, way before dinosaurs.
So these ancient creatures on the ocean floor, you're telling me they have something to teach us about being human?
Well, it's not so much about learning from lobsters specifically, but recognizing that this drive to navigate hierarchies, to strive to compete, it's deeply rooted in our biology, even if we don't always realize it.
So our reactions to order and chaos, it's not just some modern invention, it's like hardwired into us.
Precisely. It's part of our evolutionary heritage.
Yeah.
And understanding that can give us a new perspective on how we relate to the world and the challenges we face.
Okay, so lobsters, hierarchies, I'm starting to see how that ties into this idea of order and chaos.
Right, and this understanding, this dynamic, it feeds directly into another big theme in 12 Rules, the problem of suffering.
And that's where things get, well, a little less cheery, right? Peterson's not exactly sugarcoating it. He pretty much says, life is going to involve suffering.
He does. He really does.
Yeah.
And it's not that he wants us to despair or anything. It's more like he's rejecting this idea that happiness is the be-all, end-all. Like, we shouldn't expect to avoid suffering altogether. It's part of being alive.
It's like trying to outrun the weather, right? You can try, but...
Exactly. It's going to catch up to you eventually. So instead of seeing suffering as this thing to be avoided at all costs, Peterson says, how do we find meaning in it? That's the antidote.
He even talks about this dream he had, right? A cathedral. It's been a while since I read it.
Yeah, he describes it really vividly. He's trapped inside this massive cathedral, and it's clearly symbolic, right? It represents the weight of existence, the burden of being.
Wow. Okay, that's a heavy image.
It is. And the cross, he sees it as this symbol of suffering, but also of transformation.
Yeah.
Like, there's potential for something new to emerge from that struggle.
So it's not just about enduring, it's about what we make of that experience.
Exactly. Instead of running, confront it. That's where growth happens. That's where meaning can be found. And that ties in directly with this idea of personal responsibility.
Okay, so how do we actually do that? Where do we start?
That's where that famous line comes in. Set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world.
Right. It's about taking ownership, isn't it?
Exactly. So often it's easy to get caught up in blaming external factors for our problems, for our suffering. But Peterson's saying, look, focus on what you can control. Your actions, your thoughts, your responses to those inevitable challenges, that's where your power lies.
It's about recognizing your own agency, even when things are tough.
Absolutely. And he has this great anecdote that illustrates this point about a late-night encounter he had.
Oh yeah, wasn't he trying to buy a microwave or something?
Not quite. He actually ran into a guy trying to sell a microwave at 2 in the morning. It's this really absurd situation, but it highlights the disarming power of honesty, even in the most unexpected circumstances.
It's like, even when it's uncomfortable, being truthful can lead to these surprisingly positive outcomes.
Absolutely. It's about being self-aware, owning your actions, and that's where it all starts, really. Building a better life, both of yourself and in how you interact with the world around you.
So we've got honesty, we've got personal responsibility, but the world's a noisy place, right? How do we navigate all these competing voices, all these different ideas about what's true, what's right?
And that's where listening comes in. Peterson talks a lot about the importance of truly hearing and understanding other perspectives.
So not just waiting for our turn to talk.
No, this is about active listening. Really trying to understand where the other person is coming from, even if you don't agree with them, before you jump in with your own judgment or evaluation.
Which is tough, right? Especially when someone's views seem way off base.
Yeah.
And Peterson's not afraid to call out what he sees as flawed ideologies.
Right, and that's an important point. He's definitely wary of any ideology that prioritizes groupthink over individual well-being.
It's like that old saying, if everyone's thinking alike.
Then somebody's not thinking. Exactly. He even uses this example of his own experience giving a controversial TEDx talk to show how easily we can fall into these traps of ideological thinking.
So it's about staying true to your own values and principles, even when it's difficult.
Absolutely. Critical thinking, questioning assumptions, being aware of your own biases, those are all crucial for navigating the world Peterson describes.
Okay, so we've covered a lot here. Order, chaos, suffering, responsibility, honesty, listening. Where does resentment fit into all of this? I mean, it's not exactly a feel-good emotion.
It's not, but Peterson sees it as this powerful force. And like anything powerful, it can be destructive or constructive. He says resentment can signal two things. Either it's time to shut up and get on with it, or it's a call to confront something that's truly unjust.
How do we know which one it is? Like, is my resentment something I need to just get over, or is this a sign that something's really wrong?
It's not always easy, right?
Yeah.
But that's where that self-awareness comes in again. Peterson talks about really looking inward, being honest with yourself. Is this resentment coming from a place of, it's not fair, I deserve better, even though maybe you haven't actually done the work? Or is it a response to a genuine injustice, something that needs to be addressed, challenged, even fought against?
So it's about channeling that energy effectively, figuring out what it's trying to tell you.
Exactly. And that takes courage,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes it's easier to just sit with that resentment, let it fester. But Peterson would say, no, confront it head on. Figure out what you want, articulate it clearly, and then move towards it, directly and with purpose.
I love that. No more meandering around, no more getting stuck in the weeds.
Exactly. And he emphasizes this idea of choosing your words carefully because language matters,
Yeah.
right? It has power. So when you're articulating what you want, be precise, be intentional, and that ties into this larger idea of aiming at the good.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice? Because the good, that can seem pretty abstract.
It can. But for Peterson, it's about orienting yourself towards something larger than yourself, contributing to something meaningful, making the world a slightly better place through your actions, your choices, even in small ways.
So it's about the impact we have, the legacy we leave behind.
Absolutely. And that doesn't have to mean some grand gesture or some huge accomplishment. It can be as simple as showing up with integrity in your everyday life, being kind, taking responsibility, speaking your truth.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Order, chaos, lobsters, the meaning of suffering. Peterson really packs it in. But if there's one big takeaway I'm walking away with, it's that power of personal responsibility. Like, it all starts with us, right?
It really does. And it's not about being perfect, because none of us are, but it's about striving, about setting our houses in order, one small step at a time. And who knows, those small steps, they might just lead to something extraordinary.
That's a great point to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. And remember, what small step will you take today? We'll see you next time.